Highly regarded as the best situational comedy of all time, specifically in a Vanity Fair variety poll, Seinfeld continues to hold an astonishing grasp on the comedy genre. Parent Analytics in 2021 provides that Seinfeld is the 99.7th percentile, with its home market travelability rate at 100%. Although the show premiered 30 years ago, with streaming services, an uptick in viewership during the COVID-19 pandemic, and younger viewers coming into play, this show remains as relevant now as it was when it first premiered. With these younger viewers, it is important to discuss the language barrier from the 90s to 2020s. After all, as times change, comedic history remains the same. And this show about everything comes with the mundane all the way to the extreme. So we can examine these types of differences in humor from a 10 over 10 article and 1 over 10 article on the entertainment platform IMDb. The first one comes from user Dreadnam stating that Seinfeld was the funniest TV show in history. Set around the everyday life of a New York comedian, it managed to spearhead every sacred cow in its sight. Sex, drugs, race, relationships, homosexuality, Los Angeles, you name it, they spearheaded it. And the best part about it was that you could see a bit of yourself in each of these four zany characters and always understand the messes they got themselves into. Just brilliant. Opposing this review comes from user JimS_8686 providing that, for me, Seinfeld does not hold up. Its overall lack of political commentary couldn't even compensate for its lackluster content as a whole. The character of Seinfeld is wimpy, whiny, grating, one-dimensional, and not funny. These two reviews provide a polarity and appreciation for types of humor. For although this show is so beloved, it's not for everybody. Therefore, we can ask the question, what are the implications of violent and benign humor on viewership in the media? To answer, we will draw from Caleb Warren and A. Peter McGraw's article, Opinion, What Makes Things Humorous, published July 9, 2015 in Volume 112 in the Volume and Academy of Sciences in the United States of America, which discusses the differences of humor and applies them to people, before moving on to these Seinfeld reviews, before finally drawing implications on how these types of humor can affect society. First, let us examine the model. Although seemingly simple in its nature, humor is a multi-layered paradigm that has been studied time and time again over the years. Warren and McGraw go in-depth on these types of humor via 3 perspective points: humor's playful perspective, humor's negative underpinnings, and humor's conflicting and ambiguous interpretations within the media. First, let us examine the playful perspective. Warren and McGraw provide that through this playful perspective, that negative occurrences are typically made more positive with the addition of humor. They go on to provide that psychiatrists find that anxiety-provoking, tense, or otherwise negative experiences can elicit humor when the situation is deemed playful. Their prime example is through an experiment where patients were instructed to draw blood from rats and were amused to find that they were toy rats. For although the situation was not playful, it was made so with the addition of humor. Moving on to our opposite side of the humor spectrum comes from the negative occurrences. Even though it is imperative to add humor to tense situations for Tenet 1, for Tenet 2, that is not the case. You should not add humor to negative occurrences, otherwise known as violent occurrences. Their prime example is through rough and tumble play, where the victim is actually the person having the most fun. This is otherwise known as dark humor, where the person who is the victim actually has more fun than the people who are bystanders, who typically see this as a violent occurrence. Finally, going on to conflicting and ambiguous interpretations within the media, we see both of these types of humor coming to play. Two types of humor on opposite ends of the spectrum come to police some while offending others. Warren and McGraw provide a Venn diagram of this phenomenon, with violent, benign, and humor itself right in the middle. Their suggestion is that humor is a simultaneous perception and is perceived differently by all. Their prime example is through flagellation at the dinner table, which horrifies a mother, but amuses a young boy. Whether or not you chuckled on the inside personifies the idea that humor is perceived differently by all and elicits differentiating responses. Now, to have a better understanding of the model, let us apply the artifact to the framework. Dreadnam later states in his article that Seinfeld probably added more language to the English dictionary than any other show in history. Seinfeld was contradictory, overbearing, and ultimately hilarious. Jednam finds that through Seinfeld's revolutionary casting, writing, and execution, it has remained so beloved in this day and age. For although this show sees the characters making the worst decisions imaginable, such as literally drugging a lady with wine and turkey in order to play with her childhood toy collection, because it is backed up by gut-wrenching humor, it is a playful perspective. Therefore, Tenet 1 involving humor's playful perspective is affirmed. Moving on to the opposite review comes from JMS_8686, providing that for me, Seinfeld's funniest moment took place years after the show thankfully ended. It was on David Letterman, with Michael Richards apologizing for his racist rant that was caught on phone cam and released to the internet. Although Jim does not find the show's antics funny, when it comes to one of the character's actors stepping out of line, it's comedy gold. This is an incredibly violent occurrence, and for Jim S_8686, it is incredibly humorous to him, at least. Therefore, Tenet 1, Tenet 2 involving negative occurrences is affirmed. Finally, Tenet 3 is an exact personification of the series as a whole. Seinfeld has gained viewers over the years as well as losing them, depending on how people reacted. The way the show personifies its identity describes how some people enjoy it and others not so much. Therefore, Tenet 3 is affirmed. Now that we have a better understanding of the framework as a whole, let us draw some implications. What are the implications of violent benign humor on viewership in the media? Well, for starters, humor itself is an overall positive implication, but that does not mean there cannot be negative connotations. And we can examine this through humor itself nowadays and humor seen connect communities. First, we can examine humor's way of making itself known nowadays, specifically in the realm of cancel culture. At the forefront, cancel culture was made to provide accountability for those who needed it. However, it has quickly spiraled into the extremes. Whether it's from a simple joke that was ultimately forgotten a few days later that was made distastefully, ultimately for Michael Richards' racist rant which offended pretty much everyone, humor is seen as a slippery slope. And although there are viewership ratings put into place to ensure the safety of viewership, it is not a surefire way that no one will be offended. South Park is a prime example of this phenomenon. Someone can become so offended they attempt to get a show taken off of air. Again, prime example of this phenomenon is South Park. Moving on to our other implication comes from humor's way of connecting communities. Yes, there are variations of humor that are seen to offend certain people and communities. However, humor itself has been seen to connect one another. In fact, dark humor is scientifically proven to help coping mechanisms with any therapeutic realm. Mary Lake, in a 2021 verywellmind.org article, provides that humor can help your physical health as well, with your cardiac and vascular systems improving with laughter. Yes, there are interesting implications. However, humor can help your mental health as well as physical health as well. Today, we have asked the question, what are the implications of violent benign humor on viewership in the media? And answered them through Warren McGraw's article, Opinion, What Makes Things Funny, and applied them to the Seinfeld reviews before finally drawing these implications. We can confirm that the implications range from positive to negative, all the way to offended and humor. We have to understand that we have the power to broaden the horizons of the viewerships around us and help others learn from the types of comedy we enjoy while taking in their comedy as well. All in all, barring tone deafness, we take it or we leave it. After all, I do believe it was George Costanza that might propose that we should celebrate each other's differences. We should accept these types of humors from one another, and that there can always be a Festivus for the rest of us.